Hey guys, DK here over at the Resupply. Something we've been planning to do for a while was a little bit of a game breakdown on some of the videos that were recorded with first-person perspectives, either from the Auckland or Brisbane sites. So just now rolling around to that about a year after this was recorded, but better late than never. Um, just gonna do some commentary on various things that happen in the game, potential areas of improvement, things that correspond to things that we went over in the positions podcasts on the resupply. Little adjustments that can be made here or there. This is a game that was done last year in Brisbane. This is Glaedr playing Commander. A couple of caveats before we get started here is that one, we're just looking for little things that you could change about a game. We're not looking to, just bash on people's play or anything like that. Anything that I say as far as this could be done better or I would have done this differently, I'll try to preface that by either this is personal preference or these are things I would critique about my own game as well. So it's not as though we're just looking to, break down other people's play and say that, oh yeah, I'm clearly better than this person, because that's definitely not the case. All of us are trying to get better. All of us are looking for areas of improvement. So these are just things that we're trying to do. Game's about to get started, so I'm going to pause it here real quick and then we'll get started here in just a second. So I'll pause it a couple of times here or there if there's something that comes up in the play that I think warrants commenting on. Other than that, I'll turn the audio back up so that everybody can hear what else is going on. Hey Troy, what's going on? Okay, so first thing to comment on here is that Glaedr immediately takes a left at the top of the blue ramp and goes to the vortex. I would describe this as a somewhat more defensive-minded deployment. We should also note here that this is a 7-on-7 game that Brisbane's playing, so it's going to be a little bit different because of the additional scout pressure and more areas that you need to watch than it would be on a 6-on-6 game. But either way, I would describe this as a somewhat more defensive-minded strategy because you're closing off one area of attack that the blue/green team can make coming from the Brisbane side. They can't go through the vortex immediately to attack you. The more aggressive opening move here, and that's not to say that it's better or worse, just different, would probably be to go directly across through the red tower and go onto the bridge to try to cut off the enemy resupply to make it to the back tower before they can, or just to engage the enemy as quickly as possible and try to close off Helm or some area like that. So that's just a little choice that's made here at the start. Again, don't think that it's better or worse than another option. This might actually be a better option in some cases if you're playing a 7-on-7 game because you have to make sure that you develop good field control. So notice that Screever, who's playing the opposing commander, did opt for that more aggressive strategy, came directly across, and essentially Glaedr anticipated what he was going to do because he's waiting for him right as he comes through the vortex. So good move there, putting down the enemy commander, and now you have a little bit more room to roam in the bridge. One here, two right. Okay, one thing to note there is you heard a little crunch on Glaedr's suit, so he got reset there on the bridge. This is going to happen a few times during the game. One of those little adjustments, and something that I struggle with as well, especially when I start getting tired or something like that, is just not getting down, not getting out of the way quickly enough, especially when you're 3-hit, because there is a tendency to think, look, I have some extra hit points. If I take a hit while I'm down, no big deal. I'll still have 2 when I get back up. But that can start adding up pretty quickly, and especially when you're in an area like the bridge here, those resets could be really disastrous for somebody else in your team because you don't know if they're faced up with somebody else, and that reset that they got off of you might allow an enemy heavier commander to get a missile, to push them out of a key area, something like that. So I'll always try, where possible, to either get out of that area or to make myself as small a target as possible once I get put down, especially because the bridge is that chase exemption zone in Brisbane, and that's something that you really need to be mindful of because it gets really hectic.
Green tower, green tower. Scout right here.
One thing I definitely like about Red's deployment here is that the direction that Glaedr's going is making sure the helm is closed off so that none of the blue scouts can get into that area to start harassing his resupply or set up a good angle. You'll notice that just before, if I back up a second or two here, that you see that there's a red scout who's going up green. So now Glaedr knows that he has some cover on that side that's going to be able to put some pressure on the green tower. So here they have a perfect crossfire from Glaedr being able to set up here shooting into the green tower. You have this red scout. I think it's a scout. It might be Troy is heavy, but I don't think so. Pushing up here and is going to be able to ping some shots into somebody else who might be facing up with Glaedr, or can shoot into the back tower to potentially put down a defender so Glaedr can get in there. So I like that part right there.
Down. Free hit, green as well. And the vortex.
Roll out.
Running down to get that reset on the person vortex, that's pretty crucial right there. Calling out that there is someone in the vortex is important information for a scout. So I don't know if there's a red scout on the backside, since we saw that there was one red scout here on the bridge. There was one who was coming up green. I don't know where the third red scout is right now, if they're getting resupplied, but if they're not doing anything else, covering vortex, or at least being in a situation where they could get that reset on somebody in vortex, is important, because if Glaedr has to constantly worry about somebody behind him pinging a shot out of him or getting three in his back or something like that, it's going to foil the attack. And that's what's difficult about the Brisbane field and just SM5 generally, is that you need to have good field control, and sometimes you're constantly having to double back to take care of another scout. That's one thing that scouts can really do to support their three hits, is making sure that those areas behind them are clear so they don't have to worry about that. Great attack there, got everybody except the medic, unfortunately, so that's what you hear him say, what? That's probably what I would say also, because that's who I really wanted to hit. But good attack. I think Glaedr noticed that the three hit is down before he goes in, so that makes it a little bit easier to get that attack run. You just go in full speed, guns blazing, gets two people down, unfortunately has a third shot taken out of him, I think, by the medic. So another thing to note, and I think we covered this in the medic broadcast, is that in a field like Brisbane, in some cases you might have the ammo put the medic down when you have a three hit coming in like this, but in other situations, notice leaving the medic up and is able to take that third hit out of the three hit actually saves them from getting kicked here.
You have 15 lives remaining. Wasted. You have 19 shots.
Okay, now Rusty is playing scout this game. He's going to be in the vortex area, and it seems pretty much from this point forward that he is just a constant pain in the ass of various attacking players on red, because of where he sets himself up relative to the attack is always getting a crossfire a lot of the red players. So we look like we had two or three, if we back up here a few seconds, red players are going to be clustered in the bridge. Here's where they need to set up and flank out their deployment, so that way you're going to block off one of Rusty's areas of attacks, because if he's just a one hit, you should be able to set up enough pressure that he's going to have to move out of that area.
Lives remaining.
Okay, we have at least two other people here Couldn't see what color they were. Looks like one is headed for the helm, and then Rusty's going to come in from the right. So if at least one of those is a red player, if I'm a red scout, I'm certainly going to try to attach myself to whoever the more dangerous of the opponents is, or the more dangerous of the scouts is, to try to make sure they can't set something up on my commander. So if one of these is a red scout, I'd be keeping a real eye out on Rusty. And if Rusty is going through to the vortex on the right, I would probably run back across red tower to try to flank him from the blue side to get into blue tower to close off that area of attack and either make Rusty look at me or force him back through the vortex so that way he can't just get a shot on Glaedr in the back. So that's what I'm talking about here. I think we have Red Scout, who is helping with this attack. Let's see where they go. If we can see, maybe the camera pulls away from them and we can't tell where they go.
You have 19 shots remaining.
Yeah, so it looks like they're going back. So ideally, that scout will be pushing to the right when they get across the red tower and go into blue to close off Rusty's attack from behind. They may also be going back to be resupplied. That's probably a situation where I would make some kind of communication to Glaedr about what's happening, like I'll get your back or I need to go back, so he knows what to watch. Because we saw that there are now 2 people over in green tower, so it's going to be really difficult. Glaedr really can't push into the back tower at this point to attack the enemy resupply while there are still 2 blue people in green tower, because they'll just be able to get him from the side or the back way too easily. In order to deal with that situation, they're going to have somebody in helm, and ideally maybe somebody pushing up from the green ramp as well. That's where things just start to get clustered really heavily.
Move out.
3 down green.
Down.
So he goes for an attack there across the skywalk to get into back tower, gets put down. I couldn't see exactly from where. That may have been from the heavy putting him down, but that's going to be a risky move. If Rusty is behind him and the vortex could easily come up behind him, or you have those 1 to 2 people in green tower, if one of them comes up. It looked like Glaedr put down Screever as the enemy commander before he went in, which is definitely something you need to clear, so I like that part. It's just a question of whether or not you're going to have a clear line of attack there, and there's going to be enough distraction for you to potentially get in, because that's a long way to go for that attack.
Scout bridge.
Okay, Rusty got forced back through Vortex here, but Glaedr gets reset in the back. That's again another time when I would say that maybe getting low as you're going across the bridge to prevent some of those cross shots that are either coming from Green Tower, which is I think where those reset shots came from, is probably a good idea. And then you can see that he's down right here. So standing out in the open on Vortex is another risky thing. You want to be able to get into the attack quickly, but standing in the open there is going to leave you open to getting reset in other areas as well.
2 scouts bridge.
Yes, I noticed there he got tagged before he came up by that other scout who came across bridge. And the reason that happened is because he's standing here in the open on Vortex. He only loses 1 hit point. He puts them down as soon as he comes back up, but that's 1 less hit point you have to get yourself into a better position.
You have 15 shots remaining.
3 hit green. Now he's coming back.
Again, maneuvering around before you're up, he's lost another hit point coming across the bridge here by just sort of trying to maneuver for better attack angle before he actually comes up, but that also costs him a hit point. He gets the other team 100 points. He loses 20 points for that. Those things stack up over time.
Heavy bridge. Heavy bridge.
You have 10 lives remaining. Roll out.
4 off.
That's not a bad check-in right there. Letting the scout know that he's 4 off of a nuke And just circling back to see what's happening in the resupply area, because he's now down to 10 shots and 10 lives, it's probably about time to think about going back. But if he's 4 off a nuke, I can understand wanting to stay out to see if you can get those last 4 specials before you have to go back for resupply. So here I like that he circles back around through blue just to check on what's happening with his resupply here at the end of the hallway in the new tower. And you see that he passes a scout here to his left. We'll be back up just a second or two here.
Roll out.
So I think this is another red scout right here who is sort of locking down the blue hallway looking into the bridge area. That again, I don't mind. Because Glaedr has come through Vortex though, if I'm this scout, I would probably prefer to push up either into the red tower over here or to circle back past where Glaedr came and check the Vortex to put a little bit more forward pressure on. Here is a much more defensive kind of angle where you can watch the bridge, see if anybody goes into red tower or helm, which would be behind Glaedr's head over here, or into the Vortex right behind him. But you're not really forward enough to cut off any enemy attacks or to push forward yourself. So this is a situation, if there's not a whole bunch of pressure, I would probably move up a little bit as this scout.
4 off. Down. Heavy down, bridge.
Launch.
On your left, bridge.
You have 9 lives remaining. 9 shots remaining.
Let's go.
Somewhat leisurely trot back to red tower here. Again, doesn't get reset on there, but I would have probably liked to see Glaedr move a little bit faster and get a little bit lower through there. That's again an area where I could easily critique myself as well, and where I would really be kicking myself if I got shot in the back right there and said, you know what, DK, that was lazy. You should have got lower. You should have rushed your way back into red tower to make sure that you get over there in your safe time so that you're not giving up that reset. Doesn't get reset here, but that's something that I look for.
Warning, you have 8 shots remaining. Attention, you have 7 shots remaining.
Yep.
Shots and lives reset.
Down to 7 shots, goes back for resupply. Probably a good idea here. He doesn't have the nuke, but that's okay. It's still early game here. We're about 3 minutes in, I think. So not terrible, almost to a nuke. Getting set up for resupply. They're not under a lot of pressure right now, so you can be a little bit more leisurely. Make sure that you get enough shots and lives here. I would probably think about taking 2 or 3 and then checking out what else is happening in the field. It also depends on where your heavy is at the moment. Since Glaedr's 1 off a nuke, he wants to be able to use that nuke in order to get the heavy into the resupply.
I'm 1 off a nuke, Owen. 1 off.
Letting the resupply know that he's 1 off the nuke, helpful information to know. That at least helps them get into a frame of mind where they know to set things up. That's also important information to communicate to the scouts and the heavy when you see them. Glaedr is going to do that here momentarily.
Reactivated.
You want? Yes.
Shots and lives resupply.
Let's go.
Green ramp.
The scout says, I'll go here, which is good because if the scout has enough that he can push out a little bit, giving the commander time to resupply is really key, and it's a good move by the scout here to try to give the team a little bit more cover so you don't want to cluster the resupply too badly.
Green ramp, squeeze.
So again, notice that looking all the way across over where green ramp is, that Glaedr knows that he has a player on his team who's coming up the green ramp to put pressure there. If Glaedr's going to be resupplied right here, I don't necessarily like that he stays to his left here for so long because he's essentially in a kind of dead space right here. He's looking for that shot to get his 20th special point to get the nuke, so I don't hate it. But when you're getting resupplied, one thing that I look for is just wasted time that you spend as a 3-hit trying to get that extra shot that you could just be using to get resupplied as quickly as possible to get yourself back into a forward area of the field.
Yep.
Shots and lives
Green
resupply.
ramp.
Roll out.
Yes, yes, yes.
Shots
Go,
and
Troy,
lives
go!
resupply.
Okay, so he got that 20th special, gets the notification for the nuke, takes one more resupply, which I think is fine because it's going to take a few seconds for the heavy to get into position. He yells, "Go, Troy." So Troy is playing heavy. This lets him know that he's about to drop his nuke and that he'll have an opportunity to get in. So we can't see where Troy is right now, but ideally, as if and when Troy hears that, he's putting himself in a position to go directly across into the back tower so he can be in the back tower when the nuke goes off. So he doesn't have to worry about backtracks or anything like that, and will give him an opportunity to break the team. If the blue then goes down the back ramp over by the blue neutral gen, that will give Troy a massive opportunity for a bunch of resets and potentially some missiles. And ideally, I think it's Squizza, who's the scout over in green tower. He can cover that. So that way, if blue team tries to go across in that direction, they're also going to face pressure from him, and you're going to get a crossfire on Troy from the back tower and from Squizza in the green tower.
Someone in the V, someone in the V.
So he tells somebody to get in the V, which is just on the other side of this wall, to make sure that he has cover when he's dropping the nuke. Good idea, good information to communicate to your resupply, because you want to make sure that somebody's not going to come in and cancel that nuke right as you're dropping it.
Go.
Nuke activated.
Vortex. Bridge.
So notice there he could still look over the wall and communicate important information of somebody going to the bridge or the vortex while he's dropping the nuke. So yeah, you don't want to pop out, but you can stick your eyes over the wall and still communicate things to your team even when you're in a vulnerable position like that, which is also good when you're the medic. Rather than just sitting there in that corner and facing the wall, you can look out and communicate other important information to your team. So I like what Glaedr does there.
Shots and lives resupplied.
3 in the helm.
Another kind of dangerous move here. He's standing out in the open, maneuvering for that shot on helm while he's still down. I would probably stay concealed behind the wall on the V here, as he calls it, before popping out to try to get that shot. If there's a 3 hit in the helm, you don't want to be giving up a shot to them while you're still down. I don't know if the enemy 3 hit is down, but you also can't necessarily know when you're going to be up relative to them. So I don't mind staying back here for another resupply or two, especially because Troy isn't back yet. But that's something else I would watch for, is not popping out before you come back online, because you're out of your safe time there. If that 3 hits up first, they can either take a shot out of you or they can put you down.
Double me.
Shots and lives resupplied.
So I should have been counting. That's about 4 or 5 resupplies I think Glaedr has taken at this point. So he's pretty healthy on lives and should have plenty of shots here for another attack run. Again, there's no pressure on the resupply, and you know your heavy's still out in the field, so I don't mind taking more here. I think that's great if you can move toward being full, so that way you can put on maximum pressure. That's great. But because there's so little pressure here on the back end, if you push forward just a little bit at this point, you might be able to get yourself in a situation where you have enough pressure to actually break the other team out of where they are. So I also wouldn't mind seeing Glaedr make a push now just for some more information. And if things get hairy, you can always come back, or if you notice that there is an enemy 3-hit or some enemy scouts that are trying to push through the vortex or cross red tower, you can always cycle back to defend the resupply, get some more shots and lives. But here's where I would probably at least think about making a journey back out into the field to evaluate what the situation is on the offensive end and to see if I can break them all the way out. It can be tempting as a commander, though, to see how full you can get, because, hey, if everybody else is out in the field, this is your best opportunity to get resupplied because they're putting pressure on the enemy while you're able to get closer to full. But that is kind of a calculation you have to make.
Yep.
Shots and lives resupplied.
Alright, just shots.
Yeah, as I suspected, he's probably full on lives at this point, so he's going to be down to just shots at this point. That's totally fine. Again, one of the nice features with Gen 8 is you can see if you're actually full on lives, so you're not risking taking a double and only getting lives when you only need shots at that point.
Go.
Yep.
Shots resupplied.
3 hit green. Shots.
Shots resupplied.
Done. Green red.
Okay, now Glader says he's going to go up green ramp, so that's going to put additional pressure from that side. Ideally, he's either seeing Troy come back or he knows that Troy is probably reaching the end of his attack phase. This is, I think, a good move because if he knows that there is a green 3-hit over on green side, he can eventually neutralize them. And if that blue, I keep saying green or blue, if the enemy 3-hit is on the other side, that will give you the opportunity to sneak up through the back if you have control of green tower, and then you can push across the skywalk into the back tower to actually put pressure on the resupply.
Move out. You're hit.
Heavy red floor!
Calling out the heavies on the red floor, important information as well, because now you know A, they may be attacking from the bottom, so resupply needs to be mindful of that. But it also means that upstairs, that's one less 3 you have to deal with. So now 2 scouts plus the commander should definitely be able to break into that resupply area if the blue heavy is downstairs, either going for a base or something like that. Side note, when I first watched this, I was like, why is Glader going around the long way to go up green? But I remembered then that there had been some modifications to the Brisbane field, and you can't cut through the middle near the airlocks the way they used to because that's all reclaimed space.
As expected, target.
Okay, there's a note there to make. Glader uses one of his missiles to get the green target. I don't mind that. That's not a bad move necessarily, because anytime you're getting the bases, that's fine. I think based on the point in the game, because we're about to cross here, we're about 5 minutes into the game at this point, so we're crossing over into the mid game. He hasn't used any other missiles, so that's one thing that might be in favor of using a missile here. Well, it doesn't seem like I've used a bunch of missiles on players already, so might as well use one on the base. But because of the potential for getting those into players, especially in a 7-on-7 where you have more opportunity to reset the scouts and things like that, and because he just got so many shots, he's got to be well over 40 shots at this point, I probably would have used shots on the base here rather than the missiles, because I just hate the idea of having opportunity to missile a player and then not having a missile to do so that I used on a base instead. I mentioned for newer players, using your missiles on the bases is fine, especially if people have otherwise low accuracy. But here, I think Glader's definitely a good enough player. I would have just used shots on this base instead of a missile, but that's my preference. So good move, good attack there. Comes up green, guns blazing, manages to get a couple of shots into somebody as he's coming up the green ramp, then makes his way across the skywalk. Isn't able to put down everybody in the blue area, so doesn't break the team there. But still, it's a good attack overall. One thing I might have considered, just the way that I play in particular, is just being very small and sneaky and seeing if I could get up that green ramp unnoticed. So that way maybe I could get onto the skywalk before they even know I'm there. But doing what Glaedr did is perfectly acceptable. Keeping the gun up at all times, very important, and standing in a position where he's able to get that shot from green tower onto somebody in the back tower, so that way he picks up a couple of shots before he even makes his attack run, is also perfectly fine. It's a good move. Here's another issue of clearing your corners and things like that. Notice Glaedr gets shot twice as he's going across the vortex. Not entirely sure where that came from. Could have been the helm, could have been green tower, but somewhere behind him there is a blue player that had the opportunity to get into his back while he's going for that player on vortex. So here's a situation where I would definitely take a look around, see what's happening in the field, see if there's an area of attack I need to close off, and important information to communicate to my scouts as to where I'd like them to set up in order to cover me if I'm going to try to get into the midfield area to make a push across into the back tower there. Another side note here, because Glader's on 1 hit point, this is a situation, if you can manage it, I love the idea of the red ammo here being able to reset Glaedr's shield and give him a few extra shots here from where he is on the vortex. You can get a cross shot from the new tower where the red resupply usually is here, but it requires very good communication and awareness between the commander and the ammo. I don't remember exactly who the ammo is in this game. It's not a Brisbane player I'm super familiar with, so I don't know if Glaedr feels that he can call that out to the person. But if I'm the commander here and I have good trust in my ammo, this is definitely a situation where I would ask for a reset if I'm in the vortex and they can get that clean shot on me to reset my shield. So when I go back across the vortex, I'll be at 3 hit points instead of 1, and then immediately having to come back. Little slow, little grinding, very cautious on that move coming from the vortex into the red tower, which is fine because he's on 1 hit point. But that's, again, a situation where you might be getting tired in the mid game because you've just gone a long attack run. But I would probably try to put a little bit more urgency into wherever I'm going at that point to try to get back on the field as quickly as possible, since I know that there was some area where I got shot in the back and I want to get that information as quickly as possible. Is the helm open? Do I need to clear green tower? What's going on in the bridge? Because it looks like the entire blue hallway in the obs deck is clear. It looks like red tower is clear. So push back up and get back into the action as quick as you can.
You have 40 shots remaining.
Wasted.
40 shots remaining, which means that when he was downstairs, he was probably closer to 50. So that's, again, why I probably would have shot that base rather than missiled it.
Bridge! Right.
Let's go.
Notice again, he took 1 in the back there, going back into red tower. I probably would try to get low going across this little skywalk that's directly under him right now, getting back into red tower. But that's, again, a very minor adjustment. But it's something I've commented on, I think, 3 or 4 times at this point. And those are just little resets that at the end of the day can make a big difference. So it's hard. It puts a lot more pressure on your quads and your hamstrings. It makes you a lot more tired during the game. But if you're looking for minor little adjustments that you can make, that's always one that I comment on for players.
Deactivated.
Green county green, back red. I nearly got another one.
So same thing I've commented on a couple of times. Here, sort of standing in the open. There's nobody in helms, this is a little bit less risky, but again, you don't know if somebody's going to come across Skywalk right here, put the scout down, get a reset into you, or anything like that. So it's just a risky move being out here in the open while you're still down, and you're no longer going to be in your safe time.
Go.
That's another situation where multiple angles are so important, because you can see that Glaedr wisely is checking green tower to see if there's anybody he can shoot on that side, but because his gun is out in front of him the way it is, if he pushes past that wall just a little bit, it looks like the blue heavy is covering the back tower right now, so he's able to put him down, and since his gun comes out first, in a legal way, because Glaedr's not targeting him, it allows the heavy to get the drop on him and put him down before he can do anything else. That's a situation where I'm pretty sure that was Screever there in the green tower. And again, Andrews put himself in a really great place to get across into the green tower, so that way it denies that ground to the enemy. It forces Screever into the middle, and because Glaedr gets that reset, Screever knows that he has to move from there real quick, otherwise Glaedr's going to put a missile on his back real quick. So that's, again, something I would comment on, not so much for Glaedr's play, but for Screever. I like his move there of just getting out as soon as he gets put down when you're facing an enemy 3-hit. Because there is a tendency I've seen some players have to try to face up and just dogfight with them and try to do a little chicken dance so you avoid the missile. I'm not a fan of that. I much prefer what Screever does, because Screever also manages to get across and put himself in the position to potentially turn that defense into offense. If he can get himself into the helm, now he has an angle to attack Glaedr from the backside and potentially shoot into the red resupply area. I've noticed, though, just in the couple of times I've played against him, it hasn't been a lot playing against Screever, he's really good about using the edges of the field, so using green tower from the green side or using the vortex when he's attacking the red side, just to make sure there's no one else behind him who can shoot him down, and is then able to score a lot of points in the midfield. So by moving away from there, he's putting himself in a more advantageous situation. And notice there we had a red player making their way across the skywalk. If I back up just a little bit here. Okay, Glaedr has the nuke here, so he's going to go back and evaluate what the situation is. If this is a situation where they can rush in. Now you have a red player who's going across. I'm pretty sure that's a scout who's making their way into skywalk right here. There is a potentially really high risk, high reward move Glaedr could make right here if he can pull himself into one of those corners and drop that nuke immediately. Because he knows there's a player attacking, it may allow them to get in. It may allow Glaedr to get in across that skywalk as well and really break them out of that back tower. But I say high risk because, one, it's an exposed area of the field. You don't know if you're going to be covered. You know that Screever has gone across here. He may be in the helm. He could just come across and potentially cancel your nuke. So that would be really risky. I don't fault Glaedr at all for not going for a nuke right there. But that would be a kind of, like I said, high risk, high reward move that you could make. If it works, it's great. If the nuke gets canceled, and I've been there a few times, it sucks. You lose a lot of momentum. So that's a situation where maybe the costs outweigh the potential benefits. But if you could kick them off of that back tower and allow that scout to set up a crossfire on them, oh, they would just so good right there. That'd be a great feeling. Going through Vortex, using the edge of the map, good move here, because I don't think Glaedr had any visibility on whether or not there was somebody in Vortex. If he'd cut the faster way to go across through Red Tower to get back to his resupply, he risks being shot in the back from someone at Vortex here. Especially since he saw Rusty here earlier, it's probably good to check that corner and just to make sure that you have an angle of defense if you're needing to get back to your resupply. So it takes a few seconds longer, but I like that move as opposed to taking the more direct route, specifically because you don't know what's going on in the Vortex. If he knew he had a scout or somebody covering this section, you could maybe just take the quicker route and go across Red Tower, or take the little ramp cutout over here to get back to your resup faster. But I'm pretty sure he's going back to resupply here to check where Troy is, to let them know that he has a nuke and they can set up for another push. Okay, so there was somebody in the red resupply area that Glaedr managed to get this reflect shot on. That's something, even when you're coming back for resupply, keep your gun up, because you don't know if you're going to have an enemy sitting in there. I think that even might be the enemy heavy. I think Shodan is playing blue heavy on this game, so I don't know if that was them, but that is something you need to be mindful of, and Glaedr's quick response and keeping his gun up allows him to kick that person out of his resupply so he can actually get resupplied also.
Coming.
Yeah, pretty sure that showed him because he says heavy's coming. I think that was who he got the shot on just now. Now, Glaedr wasn't up, so I think that whoever shot Shodan down might have been a scout in the Vortex. Again, from Shodan's point of view, coming in to attack the red resupply area, places he needs to make sure are clear are the Vortex, Red Tower, and helm, which would be like behind here from this angle. That's a lot to keep track of. That's why it's so difficult to break into the resupply areas in Brisbane, because there's always like 3 different areas you need to keep track of. But those are areas you need to be cognizant of if you were a 3-hit or a scout for that matter who is attacking the enemy resupply position. And if you can't get yourself low enough to prevent shots from those angles, maybe you need to consider remaneuvering yourself, repositioning yourself, setting up with your team so that way you're covering those areas as well.
2 off. Red tower, red tower. Heavy down.
He's not going for resupply there because he knows that there's still a shot left on the heavy. This is a situation where if you really trust your ammo, maybe you can go ahead and take that double and allow the ammo to take that 3rd shot out of the heavy if they're going to come back across. But I certainly don't fault Glaedr for deciding to take that 3rd shot himself, especially because that's also going to get you another special or something like that. But if you know that that's the heavy, that's again a small adjustment you can make. If the ammo is good, cognizant, aware of that, Glaedr can go ahead and get reset right here, can get some shots and lives, and then the ammo can eventually take that 3rd shot out of the heavy, especially because I think Shodan comes in and isn't all the way up yet. So the ammo actually could have got a free shot there to put him down before he even comes up.
Squeeze it, go. Give me one, give me one.
Shots and
That's
lives
this, backtrack.
supplied. Enemy view detected.
Okay, I watched this a couple of times earlier, and one thing I want to make note of for everybody so they're aware on the rules, notice that the resupply has come out here already to do their backtrack. This actually is not correct, especially because the medic right here, who I believe is Pina Colada, and again, not a Brisbane player I'm super familiar with, I'm just going off of the scorecard, is up right here, leaving herself vulnerable to fire from the helm, from the green ramp, from a variety of different areas, and this is not setting a path yet because they are both still active. So anywhere that they go from here, opponents can follow them as much as they want if the point where they went down, if they were still up at that point, basically. So if they were to have somebody come up on the little red ramp right here, they could get back into that red resupply area with no problem at all. Okay, nuke goes off right there. So if we back up just, I think, 1 second here. Okay, so right there. So where Pina Colada's feet are directly under there, that is where her path would begin. So the backtrack does actually work at this point, at least for Pina Colada's point of view, but their goal was to get basically to the edge of this wall right here to have that entire length backtracked. Because the nuke doesn't go off until it's actually right here, this is the only area the backtrack actually counts from. So if you're newer to the chasing rule, it only matters like where your path is, where you're deactivated. So backtracking while you're still up doesn't actually do anything. If the ammo, if they'd put each other down before they come out, they would have been deactivated that whole path, then they could have had that entire length of the chase. But because they were both up, it's not until the nuke drops their path actually begins going back into the resupply area. So I think you still leave clear in this area, this area coming up on the red ramp. If somebody were to come up the death stairs, they could take that left, bank into the red resupply area in the new tower, and have perfectly legal shots against these 2 players because of where the backtrack actually happens.
Deactivated.
Glaedr has that entire length of chase, though, basically from where the obs deck is going back into new tower. So he is safe from that angle, but if anybody were savvy enough to come up the death stairs onto red ramp, they would have legal shots coming in here.
Leave me, leave me, leave me. Troy, go! Oh, give me one.
And this is good communication from Troy. Andrew's about to drop the nuke, tells Troy to go. Troy's on his way back. I think that's him right here. Come back and says, no, don't do it. I need to get resupplied now. So Andrew pulls back, doesn't throw the nuke right then. And that's good communication between those two because that stops Andrew's nuke from being wasted, essentially.
I only just got it.
Yeah, sorry. I kicked him out. They saw the medic's match, so.
Give me one.
Good information from Troy there because Glaedr lets him know, I just got the nuke, so it's fine. There'll be time to drop it later. Troy comments that he had already kicked them out. He put a couple of missiles into the medic. We'll check the scorecard, see if that's actually true or not afterward. But in any case, that's good information. Both 3 hits are back now. Andrew probably does need a resupply or two. I'm keep switching off and calling him Andrew and Glaedr. I'm talking about the same person, the person who's in the video. So they could probably take 1 or 2 more resupplies, but I would think about pushing out at this point if Troy is back. But I think Troy's point of view is he's just going to take 2 resupplies and then go back out. So that way it's going to allow Andrew to drop that nuke.
Shots and lives
2
resupplied.
more, I'll go back if you want.
Alright.
Yeah, it says 2 more and I'll go back if you want. So that's good awareness on the part of the heavy. You want to be able to sit back and get full, right? If you're heavy, you want to be able to get lots of shots and lives to make sure your team is secure. But in this situation specifically, because Glaedr has a nuke, it's probably good that he just grab 1 or 2 and go out. We're also getting to a situation where we have a scout, we have a heavy, we have the commander who are all back, all getting resupplied. That's not a good situation. This is when you leave open the opportunity for the enemy to come in and start putting pressure, because the only people who are going to be out in the field right now are 2 red scouts, and they can just get picked apart by the enemy 3 hits depending on where they are. So now it's time for red team to think about transitioning back into an offensive mindset and at least covering some more ground. So if I'm this scout right here, I am probably taking 1 and I'm pushing over to the vortex as soon as I get that resupply. At least until I know 1 of my 3 hits is clear of that area. Because with 10 shots and 5 lives, I should be able to hold that vortex for at least another 30 seconds while the 3 hits get some resupply here.
Just shots.
Let's go.
How 1 hit left?
Are you gonna do it,
You
Andrew?
have 40
Yeah,
shots remaining.
Okay. Take 1.
Get 1, Owen.
So Troy only took the 1 resupply there and is now going to push out into the field. Says that Glaedr's going to take 1 more resupply and then he's going to drop the nuke. So that, again, good unselfish play on Troy's part. Knows that he'll be able to get in because the nuke is about to go off, so he's not going to waste a bunch of shots and lives out in the field, and will give him a chance to get a good offensive run going while Glaedr is able to drop the nuke, get a couple of resupplies, and then Troy can come back and switch with him.
Give me first, me first. Get 1 and go.
Lives resupplied.
Andrew tells the scout to get 1 and go. That is good advice, both because the scout shouldn't be clustering the resupply while there's a 3 hit there, and because Glaedr's about to drop that nuke. That scout needs to get themselves into a position where they're actually going to be able to do some damage to the enemy team. So if I'm that scout, one area I'm considering going is to that back blue ramp where you can shoot into the back ramp. If in case blue team decides to go down that back ramp toward the blue target, you can ping some shots into them while Troy is covering them from the other side. The other areas I would think about getting to would be the helm or the green tower in order to support that attack that is about to be set up by this nuke. So that's a good situation where Glaedr tells the scout to get out, and the reason for that is because the nuke is about to drop, and plus that scout just got, I think, 20 shots and 10 lives. That's plenty for them right now. That'll give them enough time, certainly, to cover this attack.
Leave me. Someone in the V, please.
Ready.
You activated.
Long time. Yep.
Lives
Oh, I just need shots.
resupplied.
So that was a situation where, because the ammo was behind that V, they need to be able to communicate that as soon as Glaedr's nuke is going to go off, that it needs to be doubled. Because the ammo gets themselves to the V here, the medic manages to resupply him directly after that nuke. And it's so nice that you have that little tone that tells you the nuke has gone off, so you don't risk getting resupplied a half second too early and getting your own nuke canceled. But that's a slight miscommunication by the resupply, so that they end up missing that double on Glaedr. So the medic in that situation should have signaled the ammo, let them know, hey, it's about time to shoot Glaedr. Let's make sure that we get him as soon as this nuke goes off.
Down!
Team calls out, there's someone in the vortex. Glaedr's able to cover that position because no one else is at vortex, manages to push the person out, get them back toward the middle. So hopefully at this point, Troy has made his way in and has put down the team, and they've made some attempt to push the blue team out of that area. Remember I said that scout that Glaedr sent out should have got themselves into a position to attack. So either get around this wall, so that way they could ping some shots in across. But if they'd seen that there had been a blue player here, I probably would have covered the vortex eye as the scout, so that way the Glaedr can get into a better position rather than them having to deal with that one hit that they just put down in the vortex.
3 hit breach. He's out. Vortex, vortex.
Deactivated.
So Glaedr knows that there was somebody going back toward the vortex. They saw them circling across from that side. That's a situation where if you really run that out quickly, might have been able to get himself into a position, rather than taking the shot as soon as he comes around the corner, to potentially set up a missile on that person going into the vortex since he knew it was a deactivated player going into there. Not saying you should definitely wait for the missile. I couldn't have a good enough view of what was going on to see whether or not a missile was feasible in that situation, but it's at least something I would look for. If I know that there's a downed player going into the vortex from my position right there, you bet your ass I'm going to book it into the vortex as quickly as possible to see if I can put a missile in him, because that is a great opportunity.
You have 14 shots remaining.
Let's go.
Near miss there, missling his own player, but good thing got the gun out of the way after the third tone, then manages to put the person down in the bridge area. That was like a close call though. First time I watched this video, I was like, oh my god, what's about to happen here? Yeah, another tough one there. Just like missing the medic earlier. Not really anything that I think Glaedr did wrong. I definitely would have gone for a missile there as well. It's just unfortunate. That seemed like kind of a slower tone, especially for Gen 8. There are definitely times where I've had a Gen 8 pack where that person is dead to rights on a missile right there because the lock just happens so quickly. So a good attempt on the missile. Doesn't manage to get it, but that person pops around the wall, and rather than getting stubborn and trying to rush in for it, Glaedr shoots them down. So nothing wrong there. Just unlucky doesn't get the missile.
Waste. Move out.
Green ramp. Heading south.
Says green ramp there, I think kind of out of habit because you're always wanting to call out where the enemy position is, but I don't know who he's actually trying to communicate that to. He doesn't say it very loudly, so I don't know if he has somebody covering that angle in helm to let them know that there's somebody in the green ramp, green tower area so that they can cover Glaedr's shot. But here again, he's going to have to put himself in a bad position because his gun's going to have to come around that wall to get vulnerable to a cross shot coming in from the back tower in this direction. So it's another situation where he really needs some scout support in the helm over here to be able to put additional pressure on whoever's coming from green ramp there in order for him to get that shot effectively.
Deactivated.
And there's Rusty doing Rusty things. Just manages to get around that wall super quick, put Glaedr down, and now he's going to go for a reset on somebody in that vortex. And because Glaedr's going to be a little bit too slow getting to a cover position, I think Rusty's going to take one out of him right here. So, yeah, this is an example of what I would call getting stubborn as a 3-hit. Knows he's facing a 1-hit, so wants to put himself in a situation to punch Rusty out as quickly as possible, but lets Rusty get that reset. That means that, A, if Rusty has rapid fire, he might be able to put Glaedr down again, and B, this is how scouts and how people like Rusty get their points, quote-unquote, the easy way, is by picking up those quick, cheap resets. So that way, once Glaedr comes back up, he might have the opportunity to mutual with him. If he's in rapid fire, he might have the opportunity to get those 2 shots into Glaedr.
Vortex, vortex.
Gets nuked, again, a little leisurely getting into the red tower, I think. Doesn't get reset in this situation, but because it had just happened at that point, I'm going to be especially aware and wary of Rusty coming in and do that same thing to get a cheap reset on me.
Heavy bridge, heavy bridge. Vortex up, vortex up.
Now, by saying that, the person in the vortex is up, this is a signal to anybody who is a red scout that they need to cover that area so that way Glaedr can get back into the center of the field as quickly as possible. That's where you want to have your 3 hits, is in the area where they have the most angles of attack. As the scouts, it's your job to back them up and to watch their flanks and to watch the back. So a red scout really needs to go into vortex right now and take that person down to move them out of that position so that way Glaedr can move into the center here without fearing an attack from his left flank coming out of the vortex here.
Right down.
That was very nice. I just have to say, that was awesome. Great double shot right there. Quick reflex. Love that. One of my favorite moments in this video. Good on you, Glaedr. In fact, let's go back. Let's watch that again. Look at that. Nice 1-2. Good job.
Right down.
You're down.
You have 20.
Might have been Rusty again there with rapid fire coming out of the green tower. So scouts, you can do a lot of damage to those 3 hits with rapid fire because he'd gotten those 2 great shots on somebody, but gets put down by that scout coming across to green tower. Not a lot that could be done there other than just being very aware of where that person is and trying to get a quick shot on him.
Lives remaining.
Nope, that wasn't Rusty in the green tower because Rusty is here on the vortex and gets 1 reset into Glaedr. And notice what he does immediately is run around to the side to try to make sure that he's going to get himself into a better, more advantageous situation so that he can choose when to take the shot when Glaedr comes up rather than just waiting for him to come up and standing in the open.
Single vortex.
Rusty says move because he knows he has a clear shot here, can get back into the vortex and set enough of a path that he is not likely to be missiled by Glaedr in the back. I would have to double check exactly what the length is there to see whether or not if Glaedr were to get a reset right here, if he could just shuffle left into the vortex to try to get that reset on Rusty, but I'm not familiar enough with the Brisbane Maze to know whether or not that would be a legal chase path here since Rusty crosses his path right here at the angle of the ramp.
Bridge.
Notice there that Glaedr had to watch both directions. He had to see the right side of the vortex, and he had to be mindful of Rusty doubling back to his left. This is why it's important for the scouts to cover the flanks, because he manages to get put down here because he's having to move his gun back and forth so quickly, looking for where that shot's going to come from.
You have 30 shots remaining.
Online.
Now I think Glaedr changes his mind, wants to see, A, if he can get some cheap shots here into the back tower from this little gap here that's going to look back into where the blue resupply area is. Plus, we know he still needs his neutral gen, the blue target at this point, so he might be thinking about going to get that at this point in the game because we're crossing over now. Definitely in late game, haven't gotten the 3rd nuke yet, so things are going a little slow, so it's probably time to think about getting that base and setting up for either for a kind of last push attack or just to make sure that you're controlling enough of the field that you can put yourself in position for a points victory. Success. Somebody managed to get to fall for that shot who was standing up too tall in the back tower and gets shot through that gap.
Red tower.
Yeah.
Looked like a 3-hit going across on a red tower. That might have been Screever who manages to put Glaedr down as he comes down that ramp. That's actually pretty good awareness by that person who's at the top because you have to look to your right and you also have to look down toward the bottom of the ramp in order to see that person. So that was good quick reaction by them.
One in vortex.
Letting the people know who just crossed that there was somebody in vortex so they watch themselves when they're going up the ramp and don't get reset. And yeah, it definitely looks like he's going for the blue target at this point.
Let's go.
As expected, target destroyed.
Again, missiles it. I don't know exactly what Andrew's shot count is at this point. This one I actually don't mind as much, though, because we have entered into the late game situation. The only missile that Glaedr has used so far was on the other base. there's not a real big chance that he's going to get all 4 missiles off on players in the remaining time left in the game. Since we're in the late game situation, there's only about 3 minutes that are left. So I don't mind this missile as much as the first one, where he had lots of shots and lots of time left. But this time around, he's not really going to want to go back for a lot more shots getting into the late game. So using the missile on the base there, I think, is perfectly acceptable. This is also a situation, since we're getting into late game here and you have to start taking some risks, where I wouldn't mind doing that little bit more high risk, high reward maneuver where he just immediately ducks into a corner under the back ramp, launches that nuke, and then goes for an attack himself up the back ramp. It's not incorrect what Glaedr does here by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly going back, letting your team know that you have that nuke so that they can set up and deploy properly for it is always a good move. It's probably the better move overall in most situations. But because you're getting into late game here, and because it's been so difficult to break into that blue area, I would at least consider doing a sneaky nuke from the bottom here and seeing if I could get myself up that back ramp in that 8 seconds of time to launch an attack from the back. And hopefully the rest of my team just knows that they need to go getting into a late game situation and make that push on a nuke.
Nuke available. 3 missiles remaining. Warning.
I feel like Jeff Goldblum here. Must go faster. Must go faster. It's getting a late game. Move on. Make sure you're getting back into an attack mode as quickly as possible and not going up that ramp too slowly. It's good to be cautious. Keep your gun up here. But I, again, would probably put a little bit more urgency into things here because I have that nuke in hand. I want to make sure my team is set up to get it as quickly as possible, and I want to get back upstairs to make sure that it's being used.
Medic is under attack.
Rusty,
Yeah, I'm aware. Don't stand there.
Caution, your medic is under
Yeah, so I'm aware, don't stand there. Rusty's attacking, saw the medic was under attack. So now Glaedr's resupply has been forced back downstairs. He has that nuke in his pocket. This is a dicey situation. Rightly tells the resupply, don't stand there because there could be somebody in back tower who's going to be able to shoot through that same gap to get them on that ramp. And because it's late game now, the medic still isn't dead. You want to get yourself in a situation where maybe they go to a semi-secure area, hand out a couple of shots and lives, but the medic at this point is probably going to be dead meat toward the end of the game. So make sure your team has enough lives, make sure the ammo stays alive, but you want to be able to put yourself in a position for at least one last push.
attack. Warning, your medic is under attack.
Heavy on one.
Attention, your medic is under attack.
Take cover.
Yep, Heavy got a reset right there because he didn't get around the corner quick enough. He manages to eat another reset off of that one from not getting around that corner. So that's, again, a situation where you always get around the corner as quickly as you can because you don't know if the Heavy's going to pick up a reset. Glaedr kind of got caught in no man's land there, knows the medic is still under attack, so probably needs to go find them if he wants to get any more lives.
You have 14 lives remaining.
Let's go.
Finds them in the galley or the kitchen here, which is important because you need to know as the commander where is the first fallback spot the resupply is going to go. Are they going to go to the galley here, or are they going to go directly back into the build, which is where Glaedr's eventually going to send them. But this lets him at least get 1 or 2 resupplies because he knows where the resupply is. This is always something you can do with your team, is where are our flush positions, where's our fallback spot if you get kicked from your position. Nice quick operation there. They double Glaedr, then the medic immediately gets some lives into the ammo. That probably even could have been about a quarter to a half second earlier, where you want to time it as quickly as possible so there isn't any dead time in between when Glaedr comes back up and when the ammo comes back up. You want to minimize that time as much as possible. So double Glaedr, get the ammo as quickly as you possibly can to try to synchronize that downtime as closely as possible.
Keep knocking the camera.
Lives resupplied.
Retail.
Let's go.
You guys need to go to the building.
Resupplied.
Maybe you, mate. How many lives you got?
8.
Go to the bush.
Okay, one more time.
So it does a quick check-in with the resupply here, tells them to go to the build, which is a much more defensive area than the kitchen here. This is just dead meat. It's a semi-fallback spot, but you have no visibility here. Notice that Glaedr has to go back and forth to check both of these areas. Neither resupply has any visibility as to whether somebody is coming in or not. So this is not a good place for them to stay. They're going to go to the build, which at least doesn't have a lot of visibility, but it's at least much more defensible. Checks with the medic. Medic still has 8 lives. They have a ton of lives. So the biggest priority right now is making sure everybody else on your team is alive and making sure that you have your targets, and that if you have a boost or something like that, that you're in a good situation to get that. Because the medic has so many lives, I'd make sure the ammo is full and send them out if there's not a bunch of people who are coming back for resupply. 8 lives is a ton this late in the game.
I'm ready.
Go in. Shoot out. Go to the bush. Go to the bush.
Quick operation. Glaedr is quick to point out after he gets doubled, make sure you put the medic down so that they're on safe time when you're about to cross this corridor to go back through the prison area, past the teleporter to go over toward the bilge.
Yep, go with them.
Tells the scout to go with them. Good advice. That way they can all go to the bilge. Make sure that scout gets resupplied. Make sure that the medic is still safe.
Go.
Sounds like Rusty has called out the Glaedrs coming up blue ramp, so now you need to be aware as the commander that the enemy likely knows where you are. They're going to expect where you're coming, so you just need to watch your angles of attack.
Heavy.
Heavy comes up the blue ramp behind Glaedr, so now he needs to be aware that that heavy is covering the blue hallway and potentially the vortex as well. Again, approaches Rusty before he actually comes back up. Rusty, I don't think gets the angle quickly enough to take one out of Glaedr, but that's another risky situation where you're standing in the open. It's not your safe time. Good chance that Rusty could have pegged him for one right there. And then again, it's a situation where because there's that heavy who's behind Glaedr, I'm pretty sure that's who this is right here. He gets put down from behind because Glader's trying to check the helm, he's trying to check the bridge, but still has that heavy covering vortex. So that's just not a good situation to be. He doesn't have enough team support to hold this area. He knows that Rusty's around, he knows the heavy is behind him. There's not going to be a good advantageous spot for him to get around on this side of the field.
Blue.
Is under attack.
Squeeze up.
Smartly goes down the red ramp here. I think that is probably the right move. It gets you away from the heavy. It gets you a safe angle to go downstairs. Gets pegged a couple of times from I'm not sure who, but it sounded like maybe Squizza, who is one of the Red Scouts, actually took the third shot out of Glaedr, maybe as a mistake or a quick reset, but that ends up taking his third hit point at that point. So that's 3 more hit points. That's 360 points for the team, for the enemy team that you're not going to be able to get back.
Ready. Deactivated.
Gets put down by the heavy again. Now he's on a situation where he's in the open floor. Not a good place to be. There's too many enemies who are upstairs who have the appropriate angles to just pick out of you. And you're going to see what happens to Glaedr here trying to watch the upstairs from a couple of different ways. It's just not a tenable situation, which is why in 2-floor arenas, you need to make sure you have control of the upstairs. Hit 1. Hit 2 from the other side. You see that he's looking into the vortex area to see if somebody's tagging him from the upstairs. But look how many different areas he has to watch. There's the area that's just above the red floor over here. There's the whole area at Skywalker in the red tower. There is the area in the blue tower up here. It's just too many things to watch. It's not a good situation to be in. Ouch, double whammy right there. Gets his third hit point taken out by somebody in the upstairs. There's just no real way to tell where they come from. has the nuke hit him, so that's a quick loss of 4 lives right there. In that situation, this is a very marginal adjustment, but hey, that's what this video series is all about. I would probably just wait for the nuke to take me down, use my save time to get out of there, book it back toward the bilge, maybe see if I can get one more round of lives or something like that, and at least check in with the rest of my team to see if there's anything else I can do. But it's certain at this point that you're not going to be able to get back up on the blue or red side of the maze. You can't go back up the blue ramp because, you know, the heavy is there. They have a scout covering from above. You can't get back up the red ramp because you have to cross that open floor. So you're going to have to either get back to the bilge or use another ramp to try to maneuver your way around.
You're down.
I got another one.
Remembers here that he still has another one, still has that nuke. Now you really need to think about just using it in order to get it off. We're approaching here about 90 seconds left in the game. There just isn't a ton of time left. You want to make sure you get that nuke off. It doesn't seem like you're going to be able to get yourself in a real advantageous position, but still a good idea to touch base with your team, see if maybe you can send them out for one last attack so that this nuke isn't just wasted.
Let's go.
Not real sure what the red person in that corner was doing. Seems like they're just kind of hanging out. That's not really doing a whole lot for the team at this point. It is helping cover some of the angles coming into bilge, but I don't think it's doing enough to really put them in an advantageous position.
Attention, enemy
I got another one, Troy.
You're down.
Come here, on the skull, on the skull, on the skull.
Yeah. Big.
lives remaining.
Select.
Now they're in a bad situation where they're having to defend the bilge, and right now you see that Glaedr isn't able to do anything. He and Squizza are both watching this hallway to see if anybody comes around, but he's not scoring points, he's not dropping that nuke, he's not getting resupplied. If you're not doing any one of those 3 things, this is dead time that you're taking as a commander. It's endgame, you're kind of in a defensive-oriented mindset at this point. I don't blame him for what happens here, but this is a kind of easy mistake that teams can make, is just getting flustered on the back end and then just losing track of time and not doing anything with the time you have left.
Down. 2 down. Heavy, Rusty.
2 off heavy.
Rusty still.
Corridor side. No.
All right, Troy has pushed out at this point. Now I'm looking for a space to drop that nuke as quickly as I can, if for no other reason than to give Troy some cover while he moves around to get up one of those ramps, either the back ramp or blue ramp, somewhere where he can get into a position to do just a little bit more damage to the enemy. If you could get maybe 2 or 3 resets, those extra 200 or 300 points you get might be the difference in the game.
Heavy down.
You have 40.
Heavy's down, Heavy's in that corridor, so dropping the nuke directly next to the resupply, probably not an option at this point. It just needs to find a corner and drop that nuke. One thing that happens here we'll see is that I definitely don't hear the 60-second warning anywhere on there, I think because of how far back Glaedr is in the bilge. He clearly doesn't hear it either, as we're about to see.
Shots remaining.
Okay, I did hear that though. That's the 15-second warning. Now there's no choice. You just have to drop that nuke or you're going to lose it. So find a corner, find anywhere that's semi-defensible, drop that nuke. Because he gets put down right there, it's pretty unlikely he's going to get that nuke off. With 8 seconds of downtime and 3 seconds from that 15-second warning, probably not going to have time to get that nuke off as a result. So that's why I said you need to drop it right at that 15-second mark, because if you get put down, it's probably not going off at all. Yeah. Glaedr realizes here that made a mistake, that ran out of time. I don't know that he heard the 15-second warning either. I heard it on the video, but that's easy for me to say. You're commander in the moment. There's 100 things going on. Maybe didn't hear that 15-second warning, but now it's definitely way too late. If you've heard the 5-second warning, that nuke is not going off. If you get it right at the very start, as soon as you hear that 5, if you pull the shortest nuke, you might get it off, but pretty unlikely it's going to go off at this point.
Nuke activated.
Didn't get it.
7,400 points and your team came second. Click your phaser battles and return to the armory.
Okay, so 7,200 points. Team came second. Glaedr, I think, would be first to admit not the best commander game here. Obviously, not even breaking 8K, not getting that third nuke off. That made the game a little bit rough. Didn't missile any players. Sometimes that just happens. There were a few things that went wrong for the team as a whole, and I tried to point out things that both the team could have done and a couple of individual things that Glaedr could have done that might have changed their fortunes a little bit. But a lot of this really came down to team deployment. With the resources he had in front of them, Glaedr was trying to pull off attacks where he could, but they never really had themselves in an ultra advantageous position to really break into where the blue team is. And part of that is on a 7-on-7 game, it's really hard to break in. So I'm going to shift view here real quick over to the stats page for this particular game. Okay, so we have it here. So looking at the game overall, green ends up winning this game not really by a whole lot, 3,200 points. And you see the difference comes in here is in the top two spots, in the commander and scout position. And if you look at the hit differentials here, Screever's 0.95, so under 1, not ideal, but not bad. That's in the acceptable range for a commander. Glaedr here is at 0.72. That's a little low. And that's where, again, just those couple little cheeky shots in areas where you don't get around a corner quick enough can start to stack up over time. So areas where Rusty got that easy reset off of him in the bridge, where he maybe ate one before he was off his safe time, where he eats those 6 shots real quick when he's on the red floor, those are areas where those kinds of resets stack up pretty quickly here. Troy did have 8 medikits, so it looks like he did a pretty good job on the attack and was maybe able to utilize those nukes pretty effectively in order to get in. So good job there. But if we look at that difference there, and look at Rusty's hit diff, 2.46. Now this isn't just to go off and have a wank over Rusty or anything like that. Obviously, Rusty's a great player, but just noticing the fact of that hit differential, if we subtract the $2,000 there, that's 8,500 points that Rusty is essentially getting off of that hit differential. That is more than enough to make up the difference in this game. So that's where things like hit diff make a big difference, and why having a deployment that is set up so that you can move around areas safely is so essential. Troy managed to break in a few times, like we said here. He had 8 medikits, but his hit differential, 0.84, okay, not ideal. You would like to see those much closer to 1. Scouts did a reasonably good job here. But I think they could have been set up even a little bit better than they were. But essentially the difference in this game here is the difference in Screever and Rusty's scores versus Troy and Glaedr in this sense. Otherwise, it's a pretty close game, but some of those marginal adjustments, those can sometimes be the difference at the end of the day. This ended up going quite a bit longer than I expected, but I had fun commentating these videos. Ideally, we're going to do a few more of these. We might do some live on the resupply. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you next time.